They are everywhere. You can't get away from them. And that's...
Why would you try?
Even Ohio. I mean, can any good thing come from Ohio? I just don't know. Missouri. Where's that? For those of you that are new here, and I introduce myself to you, and I'll say, "How are you?" You usually say, "I'm fine," and then you'll say to me, "How are you?" And I say, "I'm miserable." And I'm just kidding. I do it to get a smile and maybe for somebody to feel sorry for me. But I'm actually miserable today. I got a bad chest cold, and nobody's going to believe me. It's that kid that cried wolf too many times, and I'll be on my deathbed, and you'll just be laughing at me. I know it, but I got it coming. I know. Turn with me to the book of James. I'm going to speak as if you already know about this chapter 5 in the book of James. It has to do with healing, doesn't it? If anybody is sick in the church and you ask for the elders, they come and they anoint you with oil and they pray for the sick. And it's a chapter on healing. And I'm only going to pick certain verses out of it, assuming that you already know James chapter 5. Because not only does he tell us to pray for the sick, but he also, in the end of chapter 5, tells us to pray for those that are sick in sin sick. And so there's a lot to the subject of prayer in the book of James chapter 5. James 5:16, again on the subject of prayer. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if he have committed sins, they shall be forgiven him. Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that you may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Elijah, or Elias, was a man subject to like passions as we are. And he prayed earnestly that it might not rain. And it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Now on the subject of prayer, I want to take some words out of the verses that we read here in the King James Version, where James says, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And I want to take each thought from the word effectual, fervent, and righteous, and dwell on them for a moment. He used Elijah as an example, didn't he? You can never become or consider yourself anywhere near being somebody like Elijah in the Bible. But you can pray like Elijah. That's what he's saying here. You can be a prayer warrior asking God to send the rain. And here also he says that we're subject to like passions as Elijah was. Like passions, I find verses in verses 10 and 11 in the book of James chapter 5 where it says, take my brethren, the prophets who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and patience. Those are like passions you and I understand. And then he says, behold, we count them happy which endured. You've heard the patience of Job and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. Jason mentioned that a moment ago. He's going through a rough time. And you know what? I think there's a lot of us here going through a rough time. I'm going through a rough time trying to convince you I'm sick and getting you to feel sorry for me. But that's light humor compared to some of the things that you are going through. Job, He was subject to like passions, as was Elijah, as was you and I. But we can look back on Job, and I want to think of two things about Job. Didn't Job's wife get angry? And can you blame her? Can you blame her for what happened to her and what happened to her children? And she chose to get mad at God. And if you get mad at God, you might as well as tell him. He already knows it. But then it becomes a matter of confession. I'm mad, God. Job's wife chose to be angry at the moment. But what did Job choose to do? Job chose to hit his knees. Job hit his knees and he prayed. And that's the example James is talking about here, learning to pray. I can't even come close to thinking of being a prophet like Isaiah, but I can pray like, Elijah. I can pray like Elijah. I can become a prayer warrior. I can pray for you every day. And I can pray that God would send rain when you need it. And when Job prayed and went through all that he went through, at the end, consider the end of Job, God let it rain. And rain down blessings on Job and his poor broken-hearted wife. You stay on God, is what he's saying. Learn to pray. You may never become an Elijah or a Job. You don't want to become a Job. But sometimes things like that we can identify happen in our lives. And we do want to turn two things. We get mad. And that's human nature. We have like passions. But then you tell God, yes, I'm mad, Lord, but who am I going to turn to? It's like Job saying, God, I know you've taken my children, but because of you, I'm going to see them again someday. I don't know how to handle these emotions. So you stay on God. And God will listen to a prayer warrior like that. Why? Because they're praying from their heart. They're not reciting something from a book. Whatever they're saying is coming straight from the heart. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous person, of a righteous man, availeth much. Like Job, like Elijah mentioned in the book of James chapter 5 here. But now I want to look at Jacob in Genesis chapter 32. And dwell on that thought, effectual, fervent, and righteous. And if we look at Genesis 32:12, we see an effectual part of Jacob's prayer. And before we look at it, I need to set the scene for you. Jacob left home because he deceived his brother, his older brother, and he got the birthright to inherit everything that his brother Esau was supposed to get when Dad died. So Jacob tricked his brother. And Mom got word that Esau was so mad he wanted to kill his brother. So she said, you need to flee. You need to go to your Uncle Laban's and stay there till I send for you. And Jacob headed for Laban's. And on his way, the first night on his journey, Jacob pillowed his head at night on some rocks. And he dreamt that there was a ladder, Jacob's ladder, angels ascending and descending. And God promised him something there. God promised him that someday he was going to be a great leader and have many children. And Jacob woke from that. And I think that's the first time Jacob got to see his angels. You and I may never get to see our angels. I had a boy with a bad heart, and he got to see his angels all the time. He would tell me about them. He'd tell me what they looked like, what color they were. I was so thankful to see God so close to my son, you know. But Jacob got to see his for a moment. And then he went to his uncle's, and his uncle was worse than Jacob. He was as sneaky as Jacob, and Jacob ended up going to the school of hard knocks for 20 years. And now Jacob has a family, and God says, I want you to go back home. And Jacob was headed back home, and he was right about the same spot he saw that ladder and those angels 20 years ago. And so he says here in Genesis 32:12, and thou sayest, I will surely do thee good, and make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for a multitude. And to make a long story short, Jacob was praying to God right about the same place he first saw those angels, and he reminded God he was being fervent in a promise that God made him. And God has made you and I promises in this holy book that we can be fervent about. I'm fervent about my salvation. I'm fervent in that I know that Jesus Christ lives in my heart, and someday, when my time comes, he'll take me home to heaven. I know that. And there's promises in this book, and God promised Jacob 20 years ago. And Jacob was reminding him because Jacob was coming home. But this time coming home, it wasn't his fear that Esau was going to kill him. Now he had a family. And his greatest fear was that Esau would not only kill him, but his family. He was fervent, wasn't he? He was effectual. He was effectual in that he was reminding God of his promises, as if God ever forgets them. But you know, when you start reminding God that he promised you something, you're starting to pray from your heart. And then in Genesis 32:26, and he said, let me go. And he was wrestling, wasn't he? He was wrestling with an angel. And the angel said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And Jacob said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. Have you ever been to that point in your life where you said, God, I can't let you go. I need you to help me. I'm in a dry and thirsty land, and I need rain. He was effectual and he was fervent in his prayer. He didn't give up. You can't get angry and fight with God. You can't get mad at God and fight him, but you can wrestle in prayer. The effectual, fervent prayer of a what? A righteous. Now look at this verse in 32:10. Jacob said to God, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and all the truth which thou hast showed unto thy servant, for with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I'm become two bands. I am not worthy. We have a verse over here on the wall that says, and thou shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead. You see that part? That's telling you what is going on here with Jacob. He's believing with all of his heart. And he comes to God knowing that he's not worthy. God, I'm not worthy to be in your presence. I'm not worthy to be even here in your presence in this church. I'm not worthy to be with these people. I'm not worthy to be here, but I'm here because I need you. And you're the only one that can help me, and I'm not going to let go. I can't. I've got to have you. He's praying from his heart. Now we're going to look at one more person, and that's the Canaanite woman in Matthew chapter 15. Matthew 15, effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous person, a righteous man, a righteous woman, availeth much. Now here's a woman that heard about Jesus. She knew who he was. She knew that he could heal and even raise the dead. She knew he was the son of David. She knew he was the Messiah. She knew who he was. The problem was she was a Canaanite. She wasn't even what you would say one of the family. She was not Jewish. Did you ever get the feeling that maybe sometimes you feel like you don't qualify? You're in the right spot, aren't you? None of us qualify. And so I read in Matthew 15, verse 22, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. She didn't come to pray for herself. Neither did Jacob. They didn't come to pray for themselves. They came to pray for family. But she knew he was the only one who could make it rain. Just Bernsteins are everywhere. They just come running in and out whenever they feel like it. It's what you'd call the Bernstein advantage, right? That's got to be it. You know what? God likes to see when you come to pray before him at the mercy seat, there are times when he looks at you just like that little boy. And he loves to see you come running. And he's as pleased to see you sitting in this church this morning as much as we're pleased to see that little boy come running in here. He was complaining that the organ was playing too loud this morning. Typical Bernstein, always complaining about something, right? This dear Canaanite, if we read in verses 23 through 26, and here's what I want you to see in the subject of being fervent. She was effectual. She knew who she was talking to, which is always good when you're talking to God in prayer. But she also was fervent in her prayer, in that verses 23 through 26, she is told many times over not to even talk to him. Let's count, you count while I read the verses, how many rejections she experiences. Verse 23, but he answered her not a word. Boy, we've been there. Have you been there? I've been there. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. She went to everybody she thought was spiritual. If I can't get a hold of him directly, maybe someone else can for me. But they said, Send her away. Rejection number 2. But he answered and said, he finally said something to her. He answered and said, I'm not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That was kind of a rejection, kind of uncomfortable moment. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take children's bread and to cast it to dogs. Have you ever given up on prayer? Can we say that right about then, she had every right to just turn around, drop her head, and walk away? He took the sacrifice, didn't he? Yeah. Yes, sir. You're not doing too well yourself. But. By the 4th time she felt rejected would be a time when you and I have felt rejection before in prayer. I remember times of praying, Lord, I can't even pray my way out of a paper bag. I can't pray. My prayers, I don't think they're even getting past the ceiling. But fervency, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. And so in verse 27 comes the word righteous. And she said, Truth, Lord, I know what I am. Truth, Lord, I know that it's not meet for the master to take the children's bread and give it to dogs. You know, some people, when you try to tell them they're a sinner, they get mad. Did she get mad? I know what I am. I'm not worthy. All I'm asking for is some crumbs. There's some fervency there, isn't there? And then the righteousness, for from her heart, she knew who she was. From the heart man believeth unto righteousness. With the heart saying, I'm not worthy. I know that, Lord. But I know this thing. I know this one thing. I'm not asking for you for $1 million. I'm asking for just some crumbs. Would you please help me? The fervency, the righteousness. And what did Jesus say? O woman, great is thy faith. He made it rain. You understand? Elijah was with like passions, and he prayed that it would not rain. And that would be like praying for sinners. But then he prayed that it would rain, and God let it rain. And that's the only example James says here, but I'll tell you this. Like Jacob, he was asking God to pour rain on his family. For the Canaanite lady, she needed rain. For Elijah, he was asking God to send the rain for his country. For your own present condition, Job was asking God to send the rain. I pray for God to send rain on my children. I pray for God to send rain on my church, on you. And I thank Him for the rain He sent today, the visitors that came. All the interruptions, who cares? Amen. And then don't we see God sending rain to our nation? Do you see it? Do you see revival coming? Yeah. I mean, we all experience it. To me, it's like a great awakening. It's like you see some people come to church and they are they're attending, and then all of a sudden there's a couple words I think of. They catch fire, or they wake up. Like they wake up to the Word of God and they become students of the Bible and they become interested, and they begin asking you questions and not sure about this or that, the other thing. And as pastors, we get texts from people, we get phone calls, people asking questions, and sometimes you give us food for sermons and things like that, so you're good for something. But God is sending rain. Now, He rain on the just and the unjust. And I'm glad I'm under the right rain. And I'm begging God. You know, I tell you that I pray for you individually, and there's some new people here I haven't seen, and I pray for you. But those of you that are regular members, I close my eyes every morning, and I see you in your pew, and I pray for you, and I pray that God would send rain. I did that this morning because of this sermon. And help you, because we are, every one of us, a dry and thirsty land. And we always will be while we're down here. That's why James also says, pray for one another. Pray that God will send rain. We need it. And so that's the message today, and may God bless the preaching of His holy word.